She has spent literal years telling anyone within earshot that she is an open book, transparent, authentic, a woman with nothing to hide and everything to show. And she didn't just say it in interviews or on podcasts. She said it on national television with a full camera crew inside her house, with producers capturing every corner of her Connecticut life. And she looked directly into that lens and said, with complete confidence, that her life was an open book. Come in, look around. She meant it as an invitation to fans. She meant it as a brand statement. She meant it as proof that Darcey Silva, the woman, the mother, the businesswoman, the romantic, was exactly who she appeared to be. And for a long time, people took her at her word. But here is the thing about inviting the world to look around. Sometimes the world actually does. And what is being looked at right now by eyes that carry significantly more institutional weight than a fan account or a Reddit thread is sending actual shockwaves through the 90-day community. Not the kind of shockwaves that come from a dramatic tell-all moment or a leaked DM, the kind that comes when the scrutiny stops being social and starts being structural, the kind that makes even the most loyal defenders go quiet and start choosing their words very, very carefully. We are talking about a level of attention that Darcey Silva absolutely did not plan for when she built this empire. And before this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why this situation is different from every other piece of 90-day drama you have ever followed, and why the outcome of what is happening right now could fundamentally change the story of who Darcey Silva actually is. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. If you are new here, welcome. This channel exists for one reason: to go beyond the edited television version of these stories and find out what is actually happening. Not rumors for the sake of rumors, not drama for the sake of drama, but real, substantive analysis of the people and situations that the 90-day franchise puts in front of us every week. If that sounds like something you want more of, do yourself a favor right now, hit that like button, and subscribe to the Tell All Tapes. We cover these stories the way they deserve to be covered, and you do not want to miss what is coming in the second half of this video. Now, let's talk about Darcey Silva. To understand why this moment matters, you have to go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of her television career, we'll get there, but the beginning of the story she decided to tell about herself. Because the story Darcey chose to tell, and the way she chose to tell it, is actually the foundation of everything that is now coming apart at the seams. Darcey grew up in Connecticut, comfortable family, creative upbringing. She and her twin sister, Stacey, were close in the way that twins in a certain kind of household can be inseparable, mutually reinforcing, building a shared identity that became both a source of strength and, over time, something that made it harder for either of them to exist fully as individuals. They modeled, they pursued entertainment. They had the kind of drive that people either find inspiring or exhausting depending on their mood. And then came the pivot, the reinvention, the branding. Darcey Silva did not just appear on 90 Day Fiancé. She constructed a persona for it. She absolutely knew that the show was not just a documentary. It was a platform. And she used it like one. The clothes were chosen. The hair was chosen. The emotional narrative, the woman searching for love, the romantic who just keeps believing, the mother who wants to model courage for her daughters. All of it was a deliberate performance of a particular kind of femininity that she believed would resonate with an audience. And it did resonate. That is the part people forget when they start criticizing her. It genuinely worked. She became one of the most recognized faces in the entire 90-day universe, which is saying something given how many memorable characters that franchise has produced. She had fans who were deeply invested in her journey. She had critics who couldn't look away. She had the kind of polarizing magnetism that reality television absolutely depends on. And she monetized it aggressively. Here is where the story gets complicated, and this is the part I need you to pay close attention to, because this is where the seeds of the current situation were planted. Darcey did not just ride the wave of her television fame into a comfortable influencer existence. She went further. She built or attempted to build an actual brand architecture around her public image. House of 11, the fashion label she runs with Stacey, became the flagship of what she consistently referred to as her empire. There was merchandise, there was wine, there were collaborations, there were coaching offerings and speaking engagements, and all the infrastructure of a modern celebrity business ecosystem. Now, here is the thing about building a business in the public eye, the way Darcey built hers. When you make your business part of your brand and your brand part of your story, and your story something you tell on national television and on social media to millions of people, you have essentially created a public record. Every announcement you make about a product launch, every Instagram post about a business milestone, every interview where you discuss your revenue and your growth and your plans, all of that becomes part of a documented narrative that can be examined, cross-referenced, and evaluated against actual financial reality. She invited scrutiny. She made the business a story. And that is precisely where the trap closes. Because when you make your money the story, certain kinds of institutional attention eventually start asking a very simple question. Okay, but where exactly is the money? Not where you say it is. Not where you present it as being in a curated Instagram grid. Where it actually is. Where it actually moved, what it actually did, who it actually went to, and when, and why, and whether the public story and the financial paper trail are telling the same version of events. And that question, once it starts being asked by the right people, does not go away because you post a new story or announce a new product. It gets louder. I want to be precise here because this channel is not in the business of speculation dressed up as fact. What I can tell you is this. There are multiple sources within and adjacent to the 90-day community who have been raising serious, specific flags about the financial structure of the businesses connected to the House of 11 brand. We are not talking about the kind of vague online complaints that surface whenever a celebrity has a bad quarter. We are talking about a documented, traceable, cross-referenced pattern of public-facing business activity that does not align cleanly with the observable outcomes. Product lines that were announced with significant fanfare and never shipped to customers who had already paid. Financial movements connected to the brand that, when mapped against the public statements made about the brand's performance, produce a picture that does not hold together under basic scrutiny. Business partnerships that were presented publicly as active and thriving while the people on the other side of those partnerships were privately describing a very different situation. I am not going to say the word that rhymes with fraud. I am not going to do that. But I will tell you this. When the numbers stop matching the narrative and when enough people with enough documentation bring that gap to the attention of enough institutional parties, certain mechanisms begin to activate. And those mechanisms do not care how many followers you have. They do not care how emotional your confessional interviews are. They do not care that you genuinely believe in your brand. They care about the documents. They care about the timeline. They care about whether what was said publicly was true. And right now, those mechanisms are active. Here is the part that I think is genuinely fascinating from a strategic communication standpoint. And I say this not to be clinical about a human being situation, but because understanding this dynamic is key to understanding why this situation is as serious as it is. Darcey Silva is in what communications professionals call a double bind. It is a position where every available response makes the situation worse, and there is no clean way out. If she stays silent, which is almost certainly what any competent legal counsel is telling her to do right now, the silence reads as confirmation to the public. In the world of social media, where Darcey has trained her audience to expect a response to literally everything, a sudden conspicuous silence on a topic this significant sends a message. People notice the absence. People screenshot the absence. People build entire Reddit threads around the absence. Silence in the attention economy is its own kind of statement. But if she speaks out, if she goes on Instagram Live, if she posts a statement, if she does an interview denying everything she does, several things simultaneously, she draws more public attention to the situation. She potentially says something that contradicts a document that someone with institutional authority has already seen. She potentially triggers follow-up questions that lead somewhere she does not want to go. She potentially steps on whatever legal strategy is being developed on her behalf. Speaking out is not just risky. In certain legal environments, it can be actively damaging. So she is caught. Say nothing, and the court of public opinion convicts her. Say something, and she potentially makes the actual legal situation worse. The woman who has an Instagram story response for everything, who cannot go 12 hours without engaging with some piece of content about herself, who has turned personal disclosure into a career, that woman is being told right now by people who matter, keep your mouth shut, and that silence is genuinely deafening. Now let's talk about the stakes, because I think some people are still not fully grasping what is actually on the line here. This is not a situation where the worst case scenario is some bad press for a week and then everybody moves on. The kind of financial scrutiny we are discussing, the institutional, document level, agency involved kind, carries consequences that operate on a completely different scale from celebrity controversy. We are talking about the potential freezing of assets. If a formal investigative process is opened and there is reason to believe that certain funds may need to be preserved as part of that process, those funds get frozen. Not temporarily inconvenient. Frozen, as in access to accounts that fund the day-to-day operations of a business and a lifestyle can be suspended while the process plays out. That is not a rumor. That is how the mechanism works. We are talking about the potential disruption of business operations. If House of 11 is connected to whatever financial pattern is being examined, the brand itself becomes part of the inquiry. Every vendor relationship, every retail partnership, every supply chain agreement, all of it becomes subject to documentation requests. The practical effect of that kind of attention on a small to medium-sized brand can be devastating even before any formal conclusion is reached. And then there is the sponsor question. Darcey's lifestyle, the travel, the aesthetics, the constant content is funded in significant part by brand partnerships and sponsored content. Those brands have legal teams. Those legal teams monitor news. And almost universally, those brand deals contain morality clauses, contractual provisions that allow the brand to terminate the relationship immediately if the partner becomes associated with certain kinds of controversy. Not convicted of something, not proven guilty of something, simply associated with a credible enough allegation. One activated morality clause tends to trigger others because brands watch each other. The first exit gives the second one permission to follow. The infrastructure of the Darcey Silva public persona, the thing that pays for all of it, is significantly more fragile than it looks when everything is filtered and lit correctly. And here is where I want to do something this channel always tries to do, which is step back from the immediate drama and ask the more interesting question: how does a person get here? Not in a judgmental way, in a genuinely analytical way. Because Darcey Silva's situation did not materialize out of nowhere. There is a psychological and behavioral pattern underneath all of this that has been visible for years to anyone paying attention, and that pattern is absolutely central to understanding why we are at this moment. Think about her relationships on the show. Jesse Meester, Tom Brooks, Georgie Rusev, Florian, ultimately in Stacey's life as a mirror. Pattern after pattern of Darcey staying in situations that were clearly not working, doubling down on the narrative that everything was fine or getting better or just about to turn a corner, presenting a version of events to the public that was significantly more positive than the version she was privately living until the gap became so large that it could no longer be managed on camera and a different version of reality forced its way through. Every single time, the same structure. Public story diverges from actual reality. Public story is maintained past the point of sustainability. Eventually, reality breaks through in a way that cannot be edited out, and the business ventures followed exactly the same architecture. The announcement comes before the product is ready. The narrative of success is established before the success actually exists. The language is confident, aspirational, definitive. We are launching, we are growing. This is our moment before the infrastructure to support any of those claims is actually in place. Now, is this malicious? Is this calculated deception? That is genuinely an open question, and it is one of the most important questions in this entire situation, because there is a significant moral and legal difference between someone who deliberately tells the public one thing while knowing the reality is different, and someone who has genuinely convinced themselves that the story they are telling is true or is about to become true, and who keeps telling it past the point where honesty requires them to stop. Darcey, based on years of watching her, seems to operate with an unusual degree of genuine belief in the version of events she presents. She does not appear to be coldly calculating when she announces a business success that hasn't happened yet. She appears to genuinely believe it is about to happen. She appears to exist in a state of perpetual imminent arrival. Success is always coming. Love is always almost here. The empire is always on the verge of being everything she promised it would be. That is not a defense of what may or may not have happened with the financials. It is a framework for understanding the psychological underpinning of a pattern that is now being examined by people with subpoena power. And that distinction between fraud and delusion, between calculated deception and sincere self-deception, may ultimately be the most important question that process has to answer. Watch any clip of Darcey in an emotional moment on the show. Watch how quickly the tears arrive. Watch how the conversation naturally pivots toward her daughters, her growth, the journey she has been on, the heart she brings to everything she does. It is a remarkable thing to observe, not because the emotion is necessarily, I am not going to make that claim, but because the emotional pivot has become so reflexive, so immediate, so perfectly timed, that it is genuinely impossible to tell at this point whether it is authentic vulnerability or an entirely unconscious defense mechanism that activates the moment something uncomfortable comes too close. And that ambiguity, which has served Darcey extraordinarily well in the world of reality television, is entirely useless in the world she is currently navigating. The institutional parties involved in the kind of scrutiny she is facing are not moved by tears. They are not moved by a compelling personal narrative. They are not moved by the idea that she loves her daughters or that she has been through a lot or that she really does believe in her brand. They are looking at documents, they are looking at account statements, they are looking at the gap between what was publicly represented and what the numbers actually show. And they bring the same dispassionate attention to that gap, whether the person being examined is sympathetic or not, whether she has a compelling story or not, whether she cries beautifully or not. Receipts do not have feelings. Here is what I want you to sit with as we head into the second half of this breakdown. The core irony of Darcey Silva's entire public existence is that she built her brand on love, on the search for it, on the belief in it, on modeling for her daughters and for her audience the idea that you can go through heartbreak and disappointment and still show up, still believe, still keep your heart open. That was the thesis of the Darcey Silva public persona. Love is worth fighting for. You deserve love. Keep going. But the love she never quite seemed to find is the one that actually would have protected her from this moment, not romantic love, the other kind. The kind that requires you to look at yourself honestly, without the filter, without the surgery, without the performance, and tell yourself the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. The kind that says, this isn't working and I have to stop pretending it is. The kind that says, I made a mistake and I have to own it rather than build a more elaborate story on top of it. Instead, she built a beautiful, filtered, aesthetically elevated performance of a life. And now the curtain is not being pulled back by fans who got tired of the show. It is not being pulled back by a scorned ex or a disgruntled business partner. It is being pulled back by people with institutional authority and a very specific set of documents in front of them. And that is a different kind of curtain call entirely. We are coming up on the halfway point of this breakdown, and we have not yet gotten to the most explosive part of this story, the specific details about what those documents reportedly show, who within the 90-day world is distancing themselves and why, and what the next likely move is in this situation. All of that is coming in the second half. Do not go anywhere. If this video is giving you the kind of analysis you came here for, do me one favor. Leave a comment right now with just the emoji. Not for any algorithm reason, though it does help, but because I want to know how many of you are tracking this story as closely as I think you are. And if you have not subscribed to the Tell-All Tapes yet, this is the moment. Because the second half of this video is where it gets truly serious, and you are going to want the context of everything we just covered to fully understand what is coming next. Let's talk about what the documented pattern actually looks like up close, because I have been deliberately building toward this, and now it is time to lay it out. When you examine the public-facing timeline of House of 11 as a business, meaning the announcements, the launches, the stated partnerships, the product rollouts, the brand collaborations, and then you map that timeline against the observable, verifiable reality of what those things actually produced, a specific and troubling picture begins to emerge. This is not about one delayed shipment. This is not about one product that underperformed. What has been documented and reported by multiple sources, including people who were directly involved in transactions connected to the brand, is a recurring structure where the announcement of a product or a partnership comes with all the confident, polished, aspirational language of something that is already real and fully operational, and then the actual delivery either arrives dramatically late, arrives in a form significantly different from what was presented, or in some cases does not arrive at all. Customers who paid for merchandise connected to the House of 11 brands have publicly documented on platforms that create a verifiable record, waiting months in some cases far beyond any reasonable window for products they were told were ready to ship. When they reached out for resolution, the responses they received were inconsistent, vague, and in several documented cases, simply stopped coming. That is not a supply chain problem. That is a customer fulfillment problem of a specific kind that emerges when the front end of a business is running significantly ahead of the back end. When the selling is happening at a pace the actual operational infrastructure cannot support. And here is why that specific pattern matters in the context of the larger scrutiny we are discussing. It creates a paper trail. Every transaction is time-stamped. Every communication is logged. Every public statement made about the brand's capabilities and readiness can be compared against the documented timeline of actual fulfillment. And when you lay all of those things side by side, what you see is a consistent, repeated gap between the story that was being told publicly and the operational reality of what the business could actually do. That gap, documented, time-stamped, cross-referenced, is exactly the kind of thing that draws institutional attention. Not because any single instance is catastrophic on its own, but because of a pattern of that structure sustained over time across multiple product cycles, involving real money from real people who did not receive what they paid for. That is a pattern that certain agencies are specifically designed to examine. Now let's talk about who is not talking and why that matters just as much as what is being said. One of the most telling signals in any situation like this is the behavior of the people who were previously closest to the subject. Not strangers, not the critics, the collaborators, the co-signers. The people whose names and images appeared alongside hers in the content, the partnerships, the brand moments. Because when those people start quietly creating distance, not loudly, not dramatically, just gradually and strategically making themselves unavailable, it tells you something important about what they know and what they are being advised. Look at the 90-day network broadly. The people who are happy to engage with Darcey content, who are happy to be associated with her brand, who are happy to appear in her orbit because her orbit had value, look at how that engagement has shifted. The energy has changed, the collaborations have thinned, the mutual tagging has slowed, nobody is making a dramatic exit, nobody is posting a public statement of distancing, they are simply becoming less present. And in the world of social media, where presence is everything, a calibrated reduction in presence is its own form of message. TLC as a network has gone conspicuously quiet on anything related to expanding Darcey's role or profile within the franchise. Now that could mean many things. Television development timelines are complicated, and not everything that slows down is a sign of institutional concern. But when you combine a network going quiet with sponsors, going quiet with collaborators, going quiet with the public social media presence, becoming simultaneously more performative and less specific, when all of those silences happen, at the same time, the pattern stops being a coincidence and starts being a coordination. People are watching, people are waiting, and the people with the most to lose from proximity to a complicated situation are ensuring they have enough space between themselves and the situation to maintain plausible distance. Stacey is navigating her own complicated terrain right now. Her relationship with Florian has generated its own significant cloud of public scrutiny, and the twin brand that Darcey and Stacey built together is under a different kind of pressure than it was even a year ago. The Silva twins have always been stronger together than apart, and the degree to which they are each currently dealing with separate versions of serious instability creates a compounding effect that neither of them designed for and neither of them appears fully equipped to manage. When your anchor is also drifting, the rope between you stops being safety infrastructure and starts being shared exposure. I want to address something directly because I know there are people watching this who are Darcey fans, real ones, people who have followed her journey from the beginning and who feel genuine affection for her. And I respect that. I am not here to be cruel. I am here to be honest. So let me be honest about this specific thing. Caring about someone does not mean protecting them from accountability. In fact, sometimes the most genuinely caring thing you can do for a person is refuse to participate in the comfortable fiction that everything is fine when the evidence says otherwise. Darcey's fans have, for years, been a significant part of the machinery that kept the comfortable fiction running. Not maliciously, not stupidly, but when every concerning development is explained away, when every red flag is reframed as a hater's projection, when every gap between what she says and what actually happens gets filled in with the benefit of the doubt that is not supported. That is insulation. And insulation, when it protects someone from the natural consequences of a problematic pattern, does not help them. It delays the reckoning while making the eventual impact worse. If you are a genuine Darcey supporter, the version of events where this situation gets examined, addressed, and resolved honestly is a far better outcome than the version where it continues to escalate unaddressed. Real support looks like wanting someone to face reality, not cheering them on as they run away from it at high speed. Let's talk about what comes next. Because situations like this do not stay static. They move, they escalate, or they resolve. And understanding the likely trajectory requires understanding which variables are currently in motion. The first variable is the legal posture. If Darcey has secured competent legal representation, and at this point, if she has not, that is itself an enormous problem, then her behavior in the next several weeks will be heavily managed. You will see less spontaneous content. You will see more carefully constructed, deliberately vague messaging about her brand and her future. You will see her lean harder into the personal, emotional content that is hardest to cross-reference against a financial document. The daughters, the journey, the love and growth content that keeps her audience emotionally engaged without providing anything that can be used against her in a more formal context. The second variable is the documentation. The people who have been raising flags about the financial patterns connected to her business have not been doing so quietly or privately. There is a public record of complaints. There are consumer protection platforms, financial accountability platforms, social media threads with thousands of interactions where the documentation of the gap between what was promised and what was delivered is sitting in an archived, indexed, searchable form. That documentation does not go away because a news cycle moves on. It accumulates, and the accumulation of it over time makes the picture clearer, not murkier. The third variable, and this may be the most important one, is Darcey herself, because ultimately the outcome of this situation will be shaped significantly by whether she is capable of a level of honest self-assessment that her entire public history suggests she struggles with. The question is not just whether she did something legally problematic. The question is whether, if given the opportunity to get ahead of this, to acknowledge the gaps, to make the affected customers whole, to restructure the business in a way that is sustainable rather than aspirational, she can access enough genuine self-awareness to take that path rather than doubling down on the performance. Every time she has faced a version of this choice before, every relationship that needed to end, every business claim that needed to be walked back, every moment where honesty required giving up the story she was attached to, she has chosen the story. She has doubled down. She has reframed and repositioned and posted and performed her way to the next chapter without ever fully sitting in the discomfort of what the current one actually cost. The people now looking at her situation do not give her the option of reframing. They give her the option of the truth. And that is a confrontation she has been avoiding her entire public life. Here's something I have not said yet in this video, and I want to say it clearly because it matters. None of what we are discussing tonight makes Darcey Silva a villain. It does not make her a monster. It does not make her uniquely corrupt or uniquely dishonest in a world full of people building aspirational public personas that outpace their operational reality. The reality television industrial complex actively rewards people for being more than they are. It hands cameras to people and tells them, show us your best self, show us the version of your life that makes people want to keep watching, and then it acts surprised when those people can't find the off switch. Darcey Silva did not invent the gap between the performed life and the actual life. She just built that gap on a larger scale, in a more public arena, with a business structure wrapped around it that created specific kinds of exposure. The tragedy, and it is a genuine one, is that the tools she used to build the platform that made her famous are exactly the tools that put her in the position she is in now. The openness, the disclosure, the constant sharing, the business as brand as identity architecture she constructed so carefully. All of it created a record. And records, in the context of institutional scrutiny, are not your friend. She built a beautiful thing. She just built it on a foundation that could not hold the weight of what she stacked on top of it. And now the weight is being felt in places and by people she did not design for. There is one more thing I want to say before we close this out, and it is directed specifically at the 90-day community broadly, the fans, the critics, the content creators, the podcast hosts, the Reddit community that spends enormous energy tracking every development in these people's lives. We have a responsibility in how we engage with situations like this. Not because the people involved are above scrutiny, clearly they are not, and clearly the scrutiny is warranted, but because there is a meaningful difference between accountability and spectacle, between following a story because the outcome matters and following a story because watching someone struggle is entertaining, between holding a public figure to the standard they set for themselves and treating their potential legal and financial unraveling as content to consume before moving on to the next thing. Darcey Silva is a public figure who made public claims about a public business. The examination of those claims is appropriate, warranted, and necessary. But she is also a person, a mother, someone whose daughters are watching what happens to their mom in real time. And the way this community talks about her, the language, the glee, the pile-on energy that sometimes accompanies 90-day drama should be calibrated against that reality. You can follow this story seriously and rigorously without making someone's potential downfall into entertainment content. This channel is going to continue covering this story. We are going to do it the right way with documentation, with sourcing, with intellectual honesty about what we know versus what we are inferring, and with the consistent reminder that the goal is accountability and truth, not spectacle. So here is where we land. Darcey Silva is standing at a crossroads that no filter can soften and no caption can navigate. The scrutiny she is facing is real, it is institutional, and it is being driven by a documented pattern that she created publicly over years of treating her business and her brand as one continuous performance. The people examining that pattern are not moved by her journey. They are not moved by her daughters or her heart or the authentic version of herself she has been promising to reveal since the first episode she ever filmed. They are moved by documents, by receipts, by the time-stamped, verifiable, cross-referenced record of what was said versus what actually happened. The question now is not whether the scrutiny is justified. It clearly is. The question is whether Darcey Silva, faced with the most serious version of consequences she has ever encountered, can finally access the one thing she has been performing for years without ever quite achieving it: genuine accountability, genuine honesty, the real open book, not the curated one, based on everything we have watched over the years, every relationship she stayed in too long, every business claim she made too soon, every emotional redirect she deployed when reality got too close. I want to believe she can get there. I genuinely do. But wanting something to be true and the evidence suggesting it is true are two different things. And the evidence right now does not offer a lot of comfort. Drop a in the comments if you think she is going to address this publicly. Drop a if you think she stays silent and lets it play out away from the cameras. I want to know where this community stands because your read on her is part of this story too. And if you are not subscribed to the Tell All Tapes yet, I need you to do that right now. Not as a courtesy, not because the algorithm rewards it, though it does, but because this story is not finished, not even close. The next development in the Darcey Silva situation is coming, and when it does, this channel is going to be the place that breaks it down completely, accurately, and without pulling a single punch. You do not want to be finding out about it from somewhere else. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, come back for the next one. Because on the Tell All Tapes, we do not just watch the drama. We follow it all the way to the truth. And the truth, it is still unfolding.